3 hours ago, I listened to my own daughter sob in front of a judge, claiming that I had squandered every opportunity they gave me. My son nodded in silence. My lawyer remained calm. Then Judge Harrington stopped reading the file, slowly looked up, and asked something no one expected. "Someone in this courtroom is lying to my face," he said with a firm voice. But to understand how I arrived at that moment, sitting in that cold courtroom with my 2 children sitting across from me, trying to declare me mentally incompetent, I need to go back 4 months, to the Tuesday when it all began. It was an afternoon in August. Olivia and Liam appeared at my house without warning. They had not visited together in months. Seeing them walk in at the same time filled me with a joy that lasted exactly 7 seconds. The time it took me to see their faces. They were not coming to visit. They were coming to serve me notice. Olivia closed the door slowly. Liam stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the street as if he did not want to be there. Neither of them sat down. Neither asked me how I was. Olivia pulled a thick folder from her designer bag, too thick to be a casual visit. She dropped it on the living room table with a dry thud that echoed in the silence. "Mom," she said with that controlled voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable, "we have to talk about something important. Liam and I have been talking, and we have made a decision for your own good." I felt a chill run down my spine. Those words, "for your own good," the same words used to justify the unjustifiable. I sat slowly on the sofa. They remained standing, as if I were an employee about to be fired. "We have spoken with a lawyer," Olivia continued, opening the folder, "and we believe it is time for someone to take charge of your finances, of your properties, of your decisions. Someone who can protect you from yourself, protect me from myself." I repeated those words aloud, trying to find some sense in them. Olivia nodded as if I had just understood something obvious. Liam still would not look at me. "Mom, you can no longer handle all of this alone," my daughter said, gesturing vaguely around the room. "This house is too big for you. Your investments are complicated. The other day you forgot to pay the electric bill, and last week you called 3 times asking the same thing. That was not true. None of that was true. I had never forgotten to pay the electricity, and the 3 calls were about 3 different matters." But Olivia spoke with such assurance that for a moment I doubted my own memory. "That is what well-executed manipulation does. It makes you doubt what you know is real," Liam finally spoke. His voice sounded tired, resigned. "Mom, this is not an attack. It is protection. We are worried. You cannot keep living alone pretending you are 30 years old. You are no longer young, and things are slipping through your fingers. Things are slipping through my fingers. Me, the woman who built an import business from scratch, the one who survived the Great Recession of 2008 without losing a single contract, the one who diversified investments when no one in my circle knew what that word meant. According to my children, that woman now could not even pay her own light bill. "What is it that you really want?" I asked with the firmest voice I could find. Olivia sighed, as if it pained her to explain something so simple. "We want to initiate a legal process, a conservatorship, so that a judge declares that you need help, that you can no longer make important decisions alone, and that we, as your children, can manage everything for you. It is the best thing for everyone, the best thing for everyone." Another dangerous phrase. I stood up from the sofa. My legs were trembling, but I was not going to let them notice. "You want a judge to declare me incompetent," I said slowly, letting every word fall with weight. "You want to control my money, my properties, my life." Olivia raised her hands in a gesture of false patience. "Do not make this harder than it is. Mom, this is going to happen anyway. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, but it is going to happen. We already spoke to the lawyer. We already started the process. We just came to warn you, so you are not taken by surprise when you receive the summons from the court." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. They had already started the process, without telling me anything, without asking me, without even giving me the chance to defend myself. My own children, the children I raised alone after their father left us, the children for whom I paid full tuition at Ivy League universities, the children for whom I worked double shifts for years. Those children were now standing in my living room telling me they were going to take control of my own life. Liam took a step closer. Mom, understand. This is temporary. Just until you stabilize. Just until we can be sure you are not going to make decisions that hurt you, or that hurt us all. There it was. The truth. That hurt us all. It was not about me. It was about them. About the money. About the properties. About the inheritance they wanted to secure ahead of time. They saw me as a risk, as someone who might spend their inheritance while alive, and they decided to act. "Get out of my house," I said with a voice I did not recognize as mine. Now, both of them looked at me in surprise, as if they did not expect resistance. Olivia picked up the folder. Liam walked toward the door. Before leaving, my daughter turned around. Her expression was cold, calculating. "You will receive the notification in the next few days," she said. "I recommend you get a lawyer. Although honestly, Mom, I do not think it will do much good. We have witnesses. We have proof. We have everything we need to prove that you are no longer in a condition to take care of yourself." The door closed. I remained standing in the middle of the empty living room. The silence was deafening. My hands were shaking. My breathing was irregular. But my mind was completely clear. Clearer than it had been in months. Because in that moment, I understood something fundamental. My children did not just want my money. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to turn me into a shadow, into someone without a voice, without will, without rights. But what they did not know, what they never imagined, is that I was not the fragile woman they expected to find. I was not the naive mother who would let everything be snatched away without a fight. I was Eleanor Vance, and I had spent 62 years learning how to survive. That night I did not sleep. I sat at the dining room table with all my documents, bank statements, deeds, investment certificates, account summaries, contracts, everything perfectly organized, everything perfectly up to date. I reviewed every paper, every signature, every financial movement of the last 5 years. There was not a single error. There was not a single inconsistency. My mind was intact. My finances were impeccable. My decisions were solid. And then I understood. If they were going to build a lie to destroy me, I was going to build a truth to defend myself. I was not going to wait sitting down for them to declare me incompetent. I was not going to allow them to take my dignity without a fight. I was going to fight, with intelligence, with strategy, with everything I had learned in 4 decades of building a fortune from scratch. I opened my laptop. I searched for lawyers specializing in family law, in conservatorship cases, in the defense of seniors. I found several names. I read reviews. I compared 1 cases. And then I saw one that stood out. Alexander Cross, specialist in reversing fraudulent conservatorship processes. He had an impressive record, and something in his profile told me he was exactly what I needed. The next morning I called his office. The receptionist gave me an appointment for 2 days later. I told her it was urgent. She must have heard something in my voice because she offered me a slot that same day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I accepted. I spent those hours preparing. I organized everything into binders, financial documents in one, medical documents in another, certificates and awards in a third. I wanted it to be clear from the first moment that I was not a senile woman who needed guardianship. I was a woman with all her faculties intact, being attacked by her own children. Alexander Cross's office was downtown, a sober building, elegant. I went up to the 3rd floor. The receptionist welcomed me with kindness. She offered me coffee. I accepted even though my hands were already shaking from nerves. 5 minutes later, a man of about 50 came out of his office, tall, serious, with a gaze that seemed to see beyond words. "Mrs. Vance," he said, extending his hand. "I am Alexander Cross. Please, come in." His office was orderly, full of books, with diplomas on the walls. I sat in front of his desk. He took a seat and looked me directly in the eyes. "Tell me what is happening," he said with a calm voice, "and do not omit any detail. No matter how small it seems, everything matters." And then I told him. I told him about Tuesday, about Olivia and Liam, about the folder, about the accusations, about the threat, about the summons that was going to arrive. I spoke without stopping for 20 minutes. He did not interrupt me a single time. He only took notes. When I finished, there was a long silence. Alexander put his pen on the desk. He looked at me with an expression I could not decipher. "Mrs. Vance," he said finally, "what your children are doing has a name. It is called financial abuse with the intent of misappropriation, and it is more common than people think. But let me ask you something important. Are you sure you want to fight this? Because it is not going to be easy. It is going to be painful. It is going to expose things you might prefer to keep private, and you are going to face your own children in court." I looked at him fixedly. "I am sure," I said without hesitation. "Because if I do not fight now, I am going to spend the rest of my life being invisible. And I did not survive 62 years to end up being a name on a piece of paper that someone else controls." Alexander smiled. It was a small but genuine smile. "Then we are going to fight," he said. "And I promise you something. When we get to that courtroom, your children are not going to find what they expect. They are going to find a woman who is prepared, with proof, with witnesses, and with the truth on her side." I left that office with something I did not have when I entered: hope and a plan. I did not know exactly how things were going to unfold, but I knew one thing with certainty. When Olivia and Liam saw me in that courtroom, when they presented their lies in front of the judge, they were going to discover that they underestimated the wrong woman. The summons arrived on a Thursday morning. A white envelope delivered by a courier who asked me to sign for receipt. I opened it with steady hands. Although my heart was beating wildly, there it was, black on white: petition for conservatorship. Petitioners: Olivia Vance and Liam Vance. Reason: mental incapacity to manage assets and make decisions. Hearing date: 3 months later. 3 months. 90 days for my children to build their case. 90 days for me to build my defense. I read every word of the document. The accusations were detailed. They said I forgot conversations, that I repeated questions, that I had made unnecessary purchases, that I left bills unpaid, that my house was in disrepair, that I refused help. Every line was a carefully constructed lie. But the most painful thing was not the lies. It was the coldness with which they were written. I called Alexander that same afternoon. He was already expecting my call. "He received the summons?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. I told him yes. He asked me to come to his office the next day with all the documents I could gather. Everything that demonstrated my capacity: bank statements, proof of payment, medical records, communications with my children, anything that would help. I spent that night and the entire next day organizing my life into folders. It was strange, seeing 40 years of work, of decisions, of responsibility, reduced to papers that I had to present to prove I was not crazy, to prove that I deserved to keep controlling my own existence. In Alexander's office, I spread everything out on his desk. He reviewed every document with meticulous attention. He took notes. He asked specific questions. "When was your last medical checkup? What medications do you take? Who is your primary care physician? Do you have close friends? Neighbors who can testify? Regular activities? Recent investments? Unusual bank movements?" I answered every question with precision. My last checkup had been 2 months ago. Blood pressure controlled, cholesterol normal, cognitive exams perfect. I took only 1 pill for blood pressure. My doctor was Dr. James Stevens, the same one for 15 years. I had friends from the book club, neighbors who saw me regularly. I did yoga twice a week. My investments were diversified and had performed well. There were no strange movements in my accounts. Alexander looked up. "Mrs. Vance," he said with a serious tone, "your situation is solid, very solid, but I need you to understand something. In conservatorship cases, the emotional burden weighs heavy. Judges are human, and when they see 2 worried children asking for protection for their mother, they tend to sympathize. We need to be strategic. We need to anticipate every argument they present, and we need to have irrefutable answers." "I understand," I said. "What do you need me to do?" He closed the folder in front of him. "First, I want you to start documenting everything. Every interaction with your children, every call, every visit. If they come to see you, take notes afterward. Date, time, what they said, how they acted. Second, I want you to request a full neuropsychological exam, voluntarily, so there is a record that you sought professional evaluation on your own initiative. Third, I need names of people who can testify in your favor, people who know you well, who can speak to your lucidity, your independence, your capacity. I nodded, making a mental note of every point. Alexander continued, and there is something else, something important. I need you to be prepared for what is going to happen in that courtroom. Your children are going to say painful things. They are going to act as if they are devastated. They are going to cry, probably. They are going to seem like the victims. You need to keep calm. You need to show yourself competent, serene, articulate. Any display of excessive emotion can be used against you. That hit me. I could not even show pain. I could not break down before the betrayal of my own children, because that would be interpreted as instability. I had to be strong, cold even, to prove I was sane. The following days were a controlled whirlwind. I requested the neuropsychological exam. They gave me an appointment for the following week. I spoke with Dr. Stevens. I explained the situation. He was indignant. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "I have treated you for 15 years. You are perfectly lucid, more lucid than many people of 40. This is abuse." I asked him to prepare a detailed medical report. He accepted immediately. I contacted Margaret Miller, my neighbor of a lifetime. She is 70 years old, a widow. We have coffee together every week. When I told her what was happening, she stayed silent for a long moment. Then she said with a firm voice, "Those kids were always ambitious. Since they were children, I saw it. But I never thought they would go this far. Count on me for whatever you need." I also spoke with my friends from the book club, Susan and Patricia. Both had known me for years. Both offered to testify. They could not believe what Olivia and Liam were doing. One of them, Susan, said something that resonated with me. "Eleanor, your children see you as an obstacle between them and the money, but they are going to discover that you are not an obstacle. You are a wall." The neuropsychological exam lasted 4 hours. Tests of memory, attention, reasoning, executive function. I answered every question. I completed every exercise. The psychologist, a young woman named Dr. Claudia Martin, observed me with professional attention. At the end, she told me the results would be ready in a week, but that she could tell me something ahead of time. "You have excellent cognitive function for any age. I do not see any sign of deterioration. None." I left there with a mix of relief and rage. Relief because science confirmed what I knew. Rage because I needed science to confirm it. Because the word of my own children weighed more than my own evident lucidity. During those weeks, Olivia and Liam did not appear. They did not call. It was as if they had already erased me. As if I were a pending transaction to be resolved in court. That indifference hurt more than the insults. It was the pain of being invisible to the people you brought into the world. But I was not invisible. I was working. Alexander and I met twice a week. He built the case with the precision of a surgeon, every document in its place, every witness prepared, every argument anticipated. He explained the strategy. "They are going to present an emotional picture," he said. "We are going to present facts, data, objective proof. They are going to appeal to the judge's heart. We are going to appeal to his reason." One afternoon, 6 weeks before the hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. It was a woman. She identified herself as an assistant from the firm representing Olivia and Liam. She informed me that my children wanted to meet with me, to try to resolve this out of court, to avoid the pain of a public trial. I told her I would consult with my lawyer. I hung up and called Alexander immediately. He did not seem surprised. "It is a tactic," he explained. "They want to test your position, see if you are willing to negotiate, to concede something in exchange for withdrawing the process." I asked him what I should do. He thought for a moment. "Accept the meeting," he said finally. "But I will be present, and you are not going to compromise on anything. We are just going to listen to what they have to say." The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. In a neutral coffee shop, I arrived with Alexander. Olivia and Liam were already there with their lawyer, a man in a gray suit who introduced himself as Lawrence Davis. We sat down. The silence was thick. Olivia spoke first. Her voice sounded tired. "Mom," she said, "this got out of control. We did not want to get to this point. We just wanted to protect you. But if you are willing to be reasonable, we can stop everything. We can sign an agreement. You keep your independence. We supervise only the large financial decisions. Everyone wins. Alexander responded before I could speak. My client does not need supervision. She does not need guardianship. And she definitely is not going to sign any agreement that limits her rights. If you want to stop this, withdraw the petition. Completely. Without conditions. My children's lawyer smiled condescendingly. Mr. Cross, let us be realistic. Mrs. Vance is 62 years old. She lives alone. Her situation is vulnerable. My clients only seek her well-being. Rejecting help is precisely a sign of the lack of judgment we are pointing out. Alexander leaned forward. His voice was cold as ice. Your client is 62 years old and has a net worth of over $2 million that she built alone. She has diversified investments that generate constant returns. She has her mental health certified by professionals. And she has witnesses who can confirm her full capacity. What your clients seek is not her well-being. It is her money, and that is going to become very clear in court. Olivia's face hardened. Liam looked at the table. Their lawyer closed his briefcase. I see there is no willingness to negotiate, he said. We will see you at the hearing then. They stood up. Olivia looked at me one last time before leaving. There was something in her eyes. It was not sadness. It was calculation. She really believed she was going to win. When they left, Alexander and I stayed in silence for a moment. Then he said something that gave me goosebumps. Mrs. Vance, prepare yourself. Because when we get to that courtroom, your children are going to do everything possible to destroy your credibility. They are going to invent. They are going to exaggerate. They are going to act. But we are going to have something they do not have. The truth. And documentation that backs it up. I left that coffee shop with absolute certainty. This was no longer just a legal battle. It was a war. And I could not afford to lose. Because losing meant more than losing money or properties. It meant losing my voice, my will, my right to exist as a complete person. That night, sitting in my empty house, I thought about everything I had built, about the difficult decisions, about the sacrifices, about the sleepless nights working to give everything to those 2 children who now wanted to erase me. And I made a decision. I was not going to be the submissive mother who lets herself be destroyed out of love. I was going to be the woman who fights, who defends herself, who does not surrender. Because when my children walked into that courtroom expecting to find a confused and vulnerable old woman, they were going to find something completely different. They were going to find Eleanor Vance, with all her proofs, with all her witnesses, with all her dignity intact, and with a very clear message. I am not going to disappear so you can inherit while I am still alive. The weeks that followed were the longest of my life. Not because of what was happening, but because of what was not happening. Olivia and Liam disappeared completely. They did not call. They did not visit. They did not ask how I was. It was as if they had already won the case in their minds, and I was just a pending formality to be resolved on paper. But the absence was not silent. It was loud. Every day, without news from them, was a reminder that they had discarded me, that I was no longer their mother. I was a problem, an obstacle, a signature they needed to void. The house felt bigger in those weeks, emptier. I walked through the halls and saw the photographs on the walls. Olivia at 6, the day of her dance recital. Liam at 10, holding his soccer trophy. The 2 smiling faces that I had fed, clothed, educated, the same faces that now accused me of being senile in front of a judge. There were moments when the loneliness weighed so much it was hard to breathe. Moments when I wondered if it was worth fighting. If it would not be easier to simply give in, let them take control, become what they wanted me to be, a docile old woman who signs where she is told and asks no questions. But those moments lasted little, because then I remembered Olivia's face when she told me this was going to happen anyway. The coldness of Liam looking out the window without defending me, and the rage returned. Not destructive rage, useful rage, the kind that keeps you standing when everything pushes you to fall. Alexander called me every 3 days. "How are you?" he always asked. And I always answered the same. "I am fine. I am prepared." But the truth is, I did not know if I was prepared. I did not know if anyone can really prepare to see their own children try to destroy them in public. One Tuesday afternoon, 5 weeks before the hearing, the doorbell rang. It was unusual. I received almost no visitors. I opened the door cautiously. It was Margaret, my neighbor. She brought a container with food. "I made you soup," she said with that kind smile she always had. "I know you are going through something difficult, and I know you probably are not eating well." She was right. I was not eating well. I had lost my appetite. Food tasted like cardboard, but I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. She served the soup without asking. And while we ate, she started talking. "Eleanor," she said softly, "I have known you for 20 years. I have seen you raise those kids alone. I have seen you work until dawn to pay for their college. I have seen you sacrifice again and again for them. And now I see what they are doing to you, and it breaks my heart." I did not know what to say. Tears started to gather in my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Margaret put her hand on mine. "But I want you to know something," she continued. "You are not alone. I am going to be in that courtroom. I am going to tell the truth. I am going to say that you are the most lucid and capable woman I know, and that your children are ungrateful people who only want your money." Those words broke me and held me together at the same time. "Thank you," I whispered. "You do not know how much that means to me." She squeezed my hand. "It means there are still people in this world who value the truth more than money, and that you are not going to face this alone." When Margaret left, I sat in that kitchen for hours, thinking, remembering. The soup went cold, but I was still there, thinking about all the times Olivia had asked me for loan money and never paid it back, thinking about all the times Liam called me only when he needed something, thinking about all the signs I ignored because I wanted to believe my children loved me more than they loved my money. The reality was clear now. They did not miss me. They did not ask how I was. They did not care if I ate or slept or cried alone in this empty house. They only cared about the hearing. They only cared about winning. They only cared about that paper signed by a judge that would give them total control. That night I started a notebook. Alexander had told me to document everything, but until that moment I had not done it systematically. Now I would. I bought a simple notebook at the corner store, and I started writing. Date. Time. What happened. How I felt. Every day without news from them. Every silence. Every absence. Every moment a mother would expect a call from her children, and it did not come. I documented the emotional negligence with the same precision with which I used to document my finances. 3 weeks before the hearing, I received a call from Olivia. It was so unexpected that I almost did not answer. Her voice sounded casual, too casual. "Mom," she said, "how are you? It's been a while since we talked. It's been a while since we talked." As if that were an accident, as if it were not a deliberate decision on her part. I responded coldly. "I am fine, Olivia. What do you need?" There was a pause. Then she sighed. "I just wanted to know how you were, and remind you that we are still in time to avoid the trial. If you accept that Liam and I manage some things, we can drop everything. We can go back to being a family. Go back to being a family. As if we had ever stopped being one because of my fault. As if I were the one who had started this process. As if I were the one who had hired lawyers to declare her incompetent. The manipulation was so obvious it hurt. "Olivia," I said firmly, "if you want to withdraw the process, withdraw it. But I am not going to sign anything that limits my rights. I am not going to hand you control of my life to avoid a trial. If you want to fight, we are going to fight. But know that I am also prepared." She hung up without saying goodbye, and I stood staring at the phone, thinking about the moment my own daughter turned into a stranger. At what moment did love turn into strategy? At what moment did I stop being her mom to become her adversary? The days dragged on. Every morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Every night I went to bed, mentally reviewing everything Alexander and I had prepared. The documents, the witnesses, the evidence. Everything had to be perfect. There could be no mistakes. 2 weeks before the hearing, Alexander asked me to come to his office for a rehearsal. "I need us to practice," he said. "I need to see how you react to difficult questions, how you handle pressure, how you look and sound under stress." I went. And for 2 hours, He bombarded me with questions. Questions designed to destabilize me. Mrs. Vance, is it true you forgot to pay the electricity last month? Is it true you called your daughter 3 times in one day? Is it true you live alone in a house too big for a person your age? Is it true you refuse to accept help from your family? I answered each one calmly. I did not forget to pay the electric bill. Here are the receipts. The 3 calls were about 3 different matters. Here are the logs. I live in the house I bought with my work and maintain impeccably, and I do not refuse to accept help. I refuse to accept control. Alexander nodded. Good, he said. Very good. But remember, in court, it is not enough to be right. You have to look it. You have to sound convincing. You have to look competent. Any doubt you generate can be used against you. I practiced in front of the mirror that night. My posture, my tone of voice, my facial expression. It was strange, having to rehearse to prove I was sane, having to act as if being mentally healthy were a role to play and not simply my reality. 1 week before the hearing, the official neuropsychological report arrived. Alexander read it first. Then he passed it to me with a smile. This is gold, he said. It is perfect. Read it. I read it. Page after page of technical evaluations, short and long-term memory tests. Normal. Sustained attention. Above average. Executive function. Excellent. Abstract reasoning. No deterioration. Conclusion. The evaluatee presents completely normal cognitive function without signs of dementia, mild cognitive impairment, or any condition that limits her capacity to make autonomous decisions. Completely normal. Those 2 words should have filled me with relief. But what I felt was sadness. Sadness because I needed an official document to prove something anyone who knew me knew, that I was perfectly fine. The last days before the hearing were the worst. I almost did not sleep. I ate out of obligation. I reviewed the documents again and again until I memorized them. Alexander called me every night. You are ready, he told me. Trust the process. Trust the evidence. Trust the truth. But the truth is, I was afraid. Not afraid of losing the case. Alexander had made it clear our case was solid. I was afraid of seeing my children, of listening to their lies, of being in the same room as them knowing they had chosen money over me. I was afraid that pain would break me at the wrong moment. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep at all. I sat in the living room looking at the photographs, the birthdays, the graduations, the Christmases, all those moments I believed were real love, all those moments that now seemed like perfectly acted lies. At 6 a.m, I got up. I showered. I dressed with care. A somber suit, comfortable but elegant shoes, subtle makeup. I wanted to look competent. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted the judge to look at me and not see a vulnerable old woman. I wanted him to see a woman who knew exactly what was happening and was ready to defend herself. Alexander picked me up at 8. The courthouse was half an hour away. We went in silence most of the way. When we were a few blocks away, he finally spoke. Mrs. Vance, he said, today is the day. Today your children are going to say horrible things. They are going to act like victims. They are going to cry, probably. But you are going to stand firm. You are going to tell the truth. And the truth is going to be enough. I nodded without being able to speak. The knot in my throat was too big. We arrived at the courthouse. A gray building. Cold. Impersonal. We went up the stairs. In the hallway, I saw Olivia and Liam with their lawyer. They saw me too. Olivia looked away. Liam held my gaze for a second before looking down. Neither of them approached. Neither said anything. We entered the courtroom. The judge had not arrived yet. I sat next to Alexander. Behind us were Margaret, Dr. Stevens, Susan, and Patricia. My witnesses. My people. The people who had come to tell the truth. The bailiff announced the judge's entrance. We all stood up. Judge Harrington entered. A man of about 60. Serious. With a gaze that seemed to see through people, he sat down, opened the file, and began to read in silence. The silence in that room was absolute. Only the turning of paper could be heard. My heart beat so loud I thought everyone could hear it. Then the judge looked up. He looked at Olivia and Liam. Then he looked at me. And he said something that changed everything. Wait, he said with a calm but firm voice. I saw this lady on the Investor of the Year list last week. At the Chamber of Commerce gala, someone here is lying to my face. The silence that followed those words was absolute. Thick, as if the air itself had stopped. Olivia went pale. Liam looked at his sister with something akin to panic. Their lawyer, Lawrence Davis, tried to maintain composure, but I saw his hands tense on his briefcase. Judge Harrington left the file on his desk. He did not look away from my children. I repeat, he said with a deeper voice. I saw Mrs. Eleanor Vance receive an award as Investor of the Year exactly 6 days ago. She gave an acceptance speech, lucid, articulate, impressive for any age. And now you are asking me to declare her incapable of managing her own affairs. Olivia cleared her throat. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Your Honor, that recognition was for past achievements. It does not reflect her current state. Our mother has good days and bad days. That was a good day. But the bad days are becoming more frequent. The judge looked at her with an expression I could not decipher. I understand, he said dryly. Then let us review this case with the detail it deserves. Mr. Davis, present your argument. My children's lawyer stood up. He opened his binder and began to speak with a professional and controlled voice. Your Honor, my clients come before this court moved by love and genuine concern for their mother. Mrs. Vance is 62 years old. She lives alone in a large house. She has shown signs of progressive cognitive deterioration. She forgets conversations, repeats questions, has neglected important payments, refuses help from her family. This is not an action motivated by economic interest. It is an action motivated by the need to protect a vulnerable woman who can no longer protect herself. Hearing those words spoken with such assurance churned my stomach. Every phrase was a lie wrapped in fake concern. Every argument was a calculated distortion of reality. And he said it with such conviction that someone who did not know me might believe him. The lawyer continued, My clients have tried to resolve this in private. They have tried to dialogue with their mother, but she refuses to recognize she needs help. She refuses to accept that her capacity is diminished. And that in itself, Your Honor, is evidence of the lack of judgment we are pointing out. Alexander stood up. Your Honor, the petitioner's argument is based on general assertions, without objective support. We have documented evidence that demonstrates exactly the opposite. Mrs. Vance is not only competent, she is exceptionally capable. The judge nodded. Proceed, Mr. Cross. Alexander opened his binder. He took out the neuropsychological report. Your Honor, this is a full neuropsychological exam performed 3 weeks ago by Dr. Claudia Martin, a board-certified specialist. The exam lasted 4 hours. It included tests of memory, attention, executive function, abstract reasoning, and judgment capacity. The conclusion is unequivocal. Mrs. Vance presents completely normal cognitive function without signs of deterioration. He passed the document to the judge. Judge Harrington took it. He read it in silence for several minutes. Long minutes in which no one in that room dared to move. When he finished, he looked up at Olivia and Liam. This exam was voluntary? He asked. Alexander responded. That is correct, Your Honor. My client requested it on her own initiative when she learned of this process. She wanted to have an objective professional evaluation of her mental state. The judge looked at Lawrence Davis. Does your side have any medical evaluation that contradicts this? The lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, my clients rely on direct observation, on daily interaction with their mother, on the changes they have noticed progressively. Direct observation, repeated the judge with a neutral tone, versus certified professional evaluation. I understand. What else do you have, Mr. Cross? Bank statements from the last 2 years. Your Honor, all payments made on time, all transactions reasonable and documented. There is not a single indicator of irresponsible or erratic financial management. In fact, my client's investment portfolio has had a return of 18% in the last year, superior to the market average. He passed the documents. The judge reviewed them. His expression was impenetrable. Then he looked at my children. You mentioned in your petition that your mother stopped paying basic services. Do you have evidence of that? Olivia rushed to answer. Yes, Your Honor. She forgot to pay the electricity. And the water, we had to intervene to prevent services from being cut. Alexander stood up again. Your Honor, here are the payment receipts for the last 24 months, all paid on time and in full form. There is not a single late receipt, not a single suspended service. The petitioner's statement is false. The atmosphere in the room changed. The judge leaned back in his chair. His gaze on Olivia and Liam hardened. I would like to hear directly from Mrs. Vance, he said. Ma'am, can you stand up, please? I stood up. My legs were trembling, but my voice came out steady. Mrs. Vance, the judge began, tell me in your own words what is happening here. Why do you think your children initiated this process? I breathed deep. Your Honor, my children initiated this process because they want control of my assets. Not because I cannot manage them, but because they want to manage them for me. I built a business over 40 years. I invested with care. I diversified my assets. And now that I am 62 years old and have a considerable net worth, my children decided it is time for them to manage it. Not because I am incompetent, but because they are ambitious. Olivia stood up abruptly. That is not true. Mom, how can you say that? We just want to take care of you. The judge raised his hand. Miss Vance, sit down. You will have your turn to speak. Olivia sat down. There were tears in her eyes. Tears that seemed genuine, but that I knew were calculated. The judge looked at me again. Continue, ma'am. I swallowed. Your Honor, since my children initiated this process 4 months ago, I have not received a single call asking how I am. Not a visit that was not to pressure me to sign some document. Not a real sign of concern. If they really believed I was sick, they would be taking care of me. But they are not taking care of me. They are waiting for a judge to give them the legal power to control me. The silence was deafening. The judge wrote something in his notes. Then he looked at Alexander. Do you have witnesses, Mr. Cross? Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call first Mrs. Margaret Miller. Margaret stood up. She walked to the front. She swore to tell the truth. She sat on the stand. Alexander approached. Mrs. Miller, how long have you known Mrs. Vance? 20 years, Margaret responded with a clear voice. We are neighbors and friends. How would you describe Mrs. Vance's mental state? Margaret did not hesitate. Lucid, intelligent, more capable than many people half her age. I see her almost every day. We drink coffee together. We talk about everything. About politics, about the economy, about books. She remembers every conversation, every detail. There is nothing wrong with her mind. Have you noticed any change in her in the last few months? Yes, Margaret said. She is sadder, quieter. But not because she is losing her mind, but because her children are hurting her. I have seen her cry, and it is not the cry of confusion. It is the cry of pain, of betrayal. Alexander nodded. One more question. Have you seen Mrs. Vance's children visit her regularly? Margaret shook her head. They almost never come. Before all this, they came every 2 or 3 months, and it was always fast. They entered. They left, as if fulfilling an obligation. But real concern, real care, that I never saw. Lawrence Davis stood up to cross-examine. Mrs. Miller, you are Mrs. Vance's friend. Obviously, you are on her side. How can we trust that your testimony is objective? Margaret looked directly at him. Young man, I have been in this world for 70 years, and I have seen everything. I have seen good children, and I have seen bad children. And these kids are not here for love. They are here for money. And if you cannot see that, then the one with judgment problems is you. There was a murmur in the room. The judge tapped his gavel gently. Order. Mrs. Miller, you may step down. Thank you for your testimony. Margaret returned to her seat. She gave me a look that said everything. I am with you. You are not alone. Alexander called Dr. Stevens, my doctor of 15 years. He swore in and sat down. Alexander asked him about my medical history. The doctor explained. Blood pressure controlled with medication. Cholesterol normal. Annual exams always normal. And 2 months ago, I performed a routine cognitive exam. Mini mental state examination. Perfect score. 30 out of 30. In your professional opinion, does Mrs. Vance have any condition that affects her ability to make decisions? The doctor was blunt. None. Absolutely none. She is one of my healthiest patients, physically and mentally. Lawrence tried to discredit the testimony. Doctor, a routine exam is not the same as a deep neuropsychological evaluation. The doctor smiled slightly. You are right. That is why I am glad Mrs. Vance had a complete evaluation done. I can only confirm that in my 15 years treating her, I have never seen a single sign of cognitive deterioration. And believe me, I know how to recognize them. One by one, the witnesses followed. Susan from the book club, Patricia from yoga. Everyone said the same thing. Eleanor Vance was perfectly fine, lucid, capable, competent, and her children almost never visited her until they decided to start this process. When the testimonies ended, the judge looked at Olivia. Miss Vance, it is your turn. I would like to hear your version. Olivia stood up. She wiped the tears she had been shedding throughout the process. Her voice sounded broken. Your Honor, I love my mother. Everything we have done is because we love her. She does not see that she is changing. We do see it. Little things, forgetfulness, confusions, and we are afraid. Afraid that one day she will make a decision that hurts her, that she loses everything she worked so hard to build. We just want to protect her. The judge let her speak. When she finished, he asked a simple question. When was the last time you visited your mother? Olivia hesitated. A few weeks ago. The judge consulted his notes. According to your mother's record, the last time you visited her was 3 months ago. To deliver the notification of this process. Is that correct? Olivia opened her mouth. Closed it. She did not know what to say. The judge continued. And you, Mr. Vance? When did you visit your mother for the last time? Liam stood up nervously. Also a few weeks ago. The judge stared at him. Be specific. Liam looked down. Maybe 2 months. The judge closed the file. I understand. So during this entire process, in which you allege that your mother needs urgent care, neither of you has gone to take care of her. Neither has gone to verify how she is. Neither has shown the concern you say you feel. Is that correct? Neither Olivia nor Liam responded. It was not necessary. The silence said it all. Judge Harrington took off his glasses. He cleaned them slowly with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. It was a simple gesture, but the silence it generated was heavy. Everyone in that room knew something important was about to happen. When he put his glasses back on, his look was different, harder, more penetrating. I am going to be very clear, he said with a deliberate voice. I have reviewed all the documentation presented. I have heard the witnesses. I have observed Mrs. Vance during this hearing, and what I see does not match at all with what you are alleging. What I see is a perfectly capable woman being attacked by her own children. Olivia tried to interrupt. Your Honor, please. The judge raised his hand. I have not finished. You are going to listen to what I have to say. Olivia sank into her chair. Her face was red. Liam looked at the floor as if he wanted to disappear. What worries me most about this case, the judge continued, is not just the lack of real medical evidence. It is the pattern of behavior I see. You initiate a legal process claiming your mother cannot take care of herself. But for 4 months, you do not visit her. You do not call her. You do not check on her well-being. If you really believed she is in danger, you would be with her every day. But you are not. You are waiting for me to sign a paper that gives you control of her money. Lawrence Davis stood up, trying to save the situation. Your Honor, with all respect, my clients have tried to maintain contact, but their mother rejects them. She refuses to accept help. That is part of the problem we are pointing out. Alexander stood up immediately. Your Honor, that is false. My client has a detailed record of all communications. Or rather, the lack thereof. Since this process began, the only contacts have been attempts at pressure to sign documents renouncing her rights. There has not been a single genuine call asking about her health. I would like to see that record, said the judge. Alexander took out the notebook I had been filling. The notebook where I noted every day, every silence, every absence. He passed it to the judge. Judge Harrington opened it. He began to read, turned several pages. His expression hardened with every line. August 17th, he read aloud. Day 3 since Olivia and Liam notified me of the process. They have not called. The house is very silent. I wonder if this is how it feels to be dead to your own children. The judge paused. He looked up at Olivia and Liam. Then he continued reading. August 23rd. Day 9. Still waiting for a call. Any sign that I matter to them beyond the money? Nothing. It is as if I had already died and they were waiting for the will. The judge closed the notebook. His voice was cold when he spoke. This is not the diary of a person with dementia. This is the diary of a mother being abandoned. Your Honor. Olivia tried to speak, but her voice broke. We did not abandon her. She pushed us away. The judge looked at her with an expression that could freeze water. Miss Vance, I have presided over hundreds of conservatorship cases in my career. I have seen genuinely worried families fighting to care for a sick loved one. And I have seen greedy families fighting to control the assets of someone who hinders their plans. This is the latter, and it is repugnant. The silence was absolute. No one dared to move. The judge continued. Besides the impeccable neuropsychological report, besides the overwhelming testimonies, besides the perfect medical history, we have something the petitioner cannot explain. We have the fact that 6 days ago, I personally saw Mrs. Vance receive an important recognition at a public ceremony. She gave a 15-minute speech without notes. She answered complex questions about investment strategies. She conversed with public officials and business people. And she did it with a lucidity and clarity that many half her age do not possess. He turned toward Lawrence Davis. That was not a good day among many bad ones. That was a woman in full control of her faculties. And you know it. We all know it in this room. Lawrence did not respond. What could he say? The judge had just destroyed his entire argument. Alexander seized the moment. Your Honor, there is something else we must present. With your permission, the judge nodded. Alexander took out an envelope. These are transcripts of text messages between Miss Olivia Vance and her brother Liam. Messages from 5 months ago. Before initiating this process, how did you get those messages? Asked Lawrence, alarmed. Alexander looked at him calmly. Mrs. Vance has access to the family phone account, which she pays for. The messages are on the server. They are completely legal as evidence. He passed the transcripts to the judge. Judge Harrington read them. His eyebrows went up. Do you want me to read some of these aloud? He asked, looking at Olivia and Liam. Alexander nodded. I believe it is relevant to the case, Your Honor. The judge cleared his throat. Message from Olivia to Liam, March 19th, read the judge. We need to act soon. Mom is talking about donating part of her wealth to charity. We cannot allow her to give away our inheritance. He paused. Our inheritance. Not her money. Our inheritance. He continued reading. Response from Liam. I agree. But how do we stop her? She is stubborn. Response from Olivia. There are legal ways. Conservatorship. We declare her incompetent. We get control. Then we can do whatever is necessary to protect the assets. New pause. Protect the assets. Not protect their mother. Protect the assets. Olivia's face was white as paper. Liam had his head in his hands. The judge continued. Another message from Olivia. I already spoke with a lawyer. He says it is easy if we build a solid case. We just need to document anything that might look like deterioration, forgetfulness, repetitions, even if we have to exaggerate a little. The judge left the papers on his desk. Even if we have to exaggerate a little, he repeated. That is direct admission of fraudulent intent. This is not a case of a worried family. This is a case of attempted financial fraud. Lawrence Davis stood up desperate. Your Honor, those messages taken out of context do not represent. The judge interrupted him. They are not taken out of context. They are dated, verified, and they are very clear. Your clients planned this months in advance, not because their mother was sick, but because they wanted to prevent her from freely disposing of her own money. I turned to look at Olivia and Liam, my children. The girl I breastfed, the boy I carried in my arms when he had nightmares, the 2 human beings I loved more than my own life. And they could not look at me. They could not hold my gaze, because they knew they had been discovered, that their plan had collapsed, that the truth was on the table, and there was no way to hide it. The judge breathed deep. I am going to take a 15-minute recess, he announced. Then I will give my verdict. Everyone remain in the room or in the immediate hallway. He banged the gavel and retired to his chambers. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia stood up abruptly. She left the room almost running. Liam followed her. Lawrence Davis gathered his papers with clumsy movements. Defeated. Everyone looked defeated. Alexander leaned toward me. "How do you feel?" he asked in a low voice. I did not know what to answer. How is a mother supposed to feel when she has just proven her children lied to rob her? When she has just won a battle, but lost her family in the process? Margaret approached. She put her hand on my shoulder. "You did well," she whispered. "You told the truth, and the truth won." I nodded without being able to speak. The tears I had held back during the entire hearing began to gather in my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Not yet. It was not over yet. I went out into the hallway. I needed air. Olivia and Liam were at the end of the corridor. They were speaking in low but agitated voices. When they saw me, they fell silent. We looked at each other from a distance. 20 yards of hallway that seemed like miles. A whole life of memories that felt like lies. Olivia took a step toward me. She stopped, opened her mouth as if she were going to say something. Then she closed it. What could she say? "I'm sorry, Mom. We didn't want you to discover our plan. I'm sorry, Mom. We just wanted your money. I'm sorry. Mom, we love you, but we love what you can give us more." I turned around and went back into the room. I could not be near them. Not in that moment. Maybe never again. Alexander was reviewing his notes. He looked up when I sat down. "It is going to be fine," he said. "The judge is smart. He saw the truth. This is going to end in your favor." But winning the case did not feel like a victory. It felt like a devastating loss. Because I had won my right to control my money, but I had lost my children. Or maybe I never really had them. Maybe they were always these greedy strangers, and I was too blinded by maternal love to see it. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Finally, the bailiff announced the judge was returning. We all went back to our places. Olivia and Liam entered last. They sat down without looking at me. Judge Harrington entered. We all stood up. He sat down and indicated we do the same. "I have reviewed all the evidence presented," he began, "and my decision is clear and unequivocal. The petition for conservatorship presented by Olivia Vance and Liam Vance is denied in its entirety. There is no medical, psychological, financial, or testimonial evidence that justifies declaring Mrs. Eleanor Vance incapable of managing her own affairs." I felt I could breathe for the first time in 4 months. The judge continued. "Furthermore, I find that this process was initiated with fraudulent motives. The evidence of the text messages demonstrates premeditation and bad faith. The petitioners did not seek to protect their parent. They sought to control her assets against her will." He looked directly at Olivia and Liam. His voice was hard. "What you did here is one of the cruelest forms of family abuse I have seen. Using the legal system to try to strip a parent of their autonomy and dignity for economic reasons is reprehensible, and I will have to seriously consider whether this case should be referred to the district attorney's office for investigation of attempted fraud." Olivia paled. Liam looked about to vomit. The judge returned his attention to me. "Mrs. Vance, I am deeply sorry you had to go through this. I am sorry the system was used against you in this way. But I want you to know that you have demonstrated abundantly your capacity, your lucidity, and your right to live your life with full autonomy. This case is closed." He banged the gavel. It was over. It had ended. I had won. Alexander squeezed my arm. "Congratulations," he said, smiling. "You fought and you won." Margaret hugged me from behind. "I told you," she whispered. "The truth always wins." But when I looked toward where Olivia and Liam were, I saw something that broke my heart one last time. I did not see regret. I did not see shame. I saw rage. Rage because they had lost. Rage because their plan had failed. Rage because I had won. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I had done the right thing. That fighting had been necessary. Because if I had given in, if I had signed what they wanted, I would not have recovered my children. I never really had them. I would have only lost my freedom in exchange for nothing. The room emptied slowly. People left in small groups. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with curiosity. I stayed seated a moment longer. I needed to process what had just happened. I had won. The judge had seen the truth. But the victory tasted bitter. It tasted of broken family, of destroyed trust, of love that perhaps was never real. Alexander was putting the documents in his briefcase. "Mrs. Vance," he said without looking at me, "we need to talk about the next steps. There are things you must do now to protect yourself." I nodded, although I was not sure I had energy for more battles. "What things?" I asked with a tired voice. "First," he said, finally looking at me, "you need to update your will. Make sure your wishes are clear and legally protected. Second, you should consider establishing advance medical directives, documents that specify who can make decisions about your health if it were ever necessary. And third, you need to protect your accounts. Change passwords, update authorizations, make sure no one has unauthorized access to your financial information." All that sounded exhausting, but he was right. I had just won a battle, but the war for my autonomy required fortifications. "Okay," I said. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow if possible," Alexander responded. "The sooner the better. The more time passes, the more vulnerable things remain." We left the room. In the hallway, Olivia and Liam were still there. They were talking with Lawrence Davis. When they saw us, Olivia separated from the group. She walked toward me. Alexander tensed beside me, ready to intervene if necessary. But Olivia stopped 6 feet away. "Mom," she said. Her voice sounded different. Less sure, smaller. "We need to talk." I looked at my daughter. This woman who had grown inside me, who had been my reason to get up every morning for so many years. And now she was a stranger who had tried to steal my life. "There is nothing to talk about," I responded with a calm voice. "You made everything very clear." Olivia shook her head. "You don't understand. We just wanted—" I interrupted her. "I know exactly what you wanted. I heard it in that courtroom. I read it in your messages. You wanted my money, my control, my submission. And when you didn't get it the easy way, you tried to take it by force." "That's not fair," said Olivia, and for the first time her voice sounded genuinely hurt. "Not everything was for money. We were worried," Alexander intervened. "Miss Vance, your concern was very clear in the text messages, planning to exaggerate evidence. In the 4 months without visiting your mother, in the lack of any real care, do not insult our intelligence." Liam approached too. His face was pale. "Mom," he said with a trembling voice, "we made a mistake. I admit it. But we are your family. You cannot simply erase us from your life." I looked at him. My son. The boy who cried when I left him on his first day of school. The teenager who hugged me when he was afraid. The man who now asked me for forgiveness, not for having hurt me, but for having been discovered. "You erased me first," I said. "When you decided that my money was more important than my dignity. When you chose to lie before a judge to control me. When you spent months without asking if I was okay. You were the ones who decided that I no longer mattered as a person, only as a bank account." Olivia had tears in her eyes, but behind those tears I could see something else. Frustration. Contained rage. It was not the cry of someone repentant. It was the cry of someone who lost what she believed belonged to her. "Are you going to disinherit us then?" she asked. Her voice had a sharp edge. "For this? For a mistake?" "A mistake," I repeated. The word sounded ridiculous. "Trying to steal your own mother's autonomy is not a mistake, Olivia. It is a choice, a cruel and calculated choice that you made consciously." Alexander touched my arm gently. "Mrs. Vance, you do not have to answer anything now. Let's go." He was right. I owed them no explanations. I owed them no forgiveness. I owed them nothing. I turned around and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Olivia's voice. "Mom, please, don't do this to us. Don't turn everything into a war." I stopped. I turned one last time. "I didn't turn anything into a war," I said with a firm voice. "You brought the tanks. You hired the army. You attacked first. I only defended myself. And now you have to live with the consequences of your decisions. Just as I have to live with the knowledge that my own children betrayed me." I left the building. The sun was high, bright, almost insulting in its joy. Margaret was waiting for me outside. She hugged me tight. "I am proud of you," she said. "You don't know how much." I returned the hug. Without her testimony, Without her support, maybe I would not have had the courage to go all the way. Alexander caught up with us. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "my office is 3 blocks away. We can go now if you feel up to it, or we can schedule for tomorrow if you prefer to rest." I shook my head. "Now," I said. "I want to resolve this now. While I still have strength." We walked in silence. Margaret came with us. I didn't ask if she wanted to accompany me. She simply came, as she had been coming for 20 years, in good times and bad. In Alexander's office, we sat down. He took out several documents, blank forms he had prepared, anticipating this conversation. "First, the will," he said. "I need to know how you want to distribute your assets. Do you want to keep your children as beneficiaries?" That question hit me like a fist. I looked at the papers. I thought about Olivia and Liam, about everything I had done for them, about everything they had tried to do to me. "I want to establish a trust," I said finally. "With specific conditions." Alexander raised his pen. "I'm listening." I breathed deep. "I want my estate to be divided into 3 parts after my death. 1/3 to charities, education for underprivileged children, 1/3 into an investment fund that generates college scholarships in perpetuity, and 1/3 for Olivia and Liam." Margaret looked at me surprised. "Eleanor, after everything they did, you are still going to leave them something?" "They are my children," I said. "And although they betrayed me, I cannot simply erase 40 years of history. But I am not going to reward them with everything either. They are going to receive a part, not the majority, and with conditions." "What conditions?" asked Alexander. "That they can only access that money after my death," I said. "Nothing in life, nothing I can see or control. And that money comes with a letter that I am going to write explaining why I made this decision, so that when they read it, when they have that money in their hands, they remember they receive it not because they deserve it, but because I chose mercy over justice." Alexander wrote everything down. He asked specific questions: amounts, percentages, names of organizations, legal details. Margaret stayed quiet, but every so often she squeezed my hand, a silent gesture of support. When we finished with the will, Alexander took out other documents. "Medical directives," he explained. "Here you specify who can make decisions about your health if you cannot. Generally people choose their children or spouse, but given the case—" "I do not want it to be my children," I interrupted. "I want it to be Margaret. If she accepts." Margaret looked at me with wet eyes. "Of course I accept," she said with a broken voice. "It would be an honor." Alexander made the notes. "I also recommend," he continued, "that you name a durable power of attorney, someone who can handle your financial affairs if you become temporarily incapacitated. Again, usually it is the children. But also Margaret," I said. "She knows my values. She knows my wishes. I trust her more than anyone." We spent 2 hours in that office, filling out forms, signing papers, building legal walls to protect me, not just from Olivia and Liam, but from any future attempt to control me. When we finished, Alexander stacked everything into a thick binder. "These documents are now recorded," he said. "Legally binding. No one can change them without your explicit consent. And there are copies in my office, in your house, and with Mrs. Miller. You are protected." I nodded, feeling a huge weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." Alexander smiled. "You fought your own battle, Mrs. Vance. I only gave you the tools." We left the office when the sun was starting to go down. Margaret insisted on accompanying me home. "You shouldn't be alone today," she said. "It has been too heavy a day." She was right. We arrived at my house, the house that had been so empty for months. But today, it felt different. It felt mine again. Not threatened, not in danger, mine. Margaret made tea. We sat in the living room. The silence was comfortable. We didn't need to talk, just be. Finally, she asked what she had probably been thinking all day. "Do you think you will ever be able to forgive them?" The question took me by surprise. I thought about it for a long time. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Part of me wants to forgive because they are my children, because resentment weighs heavy, but another part of me knows that forgiveness without genuine repentance is just an open door for more abuse." Margaret nodded. You don't have to decide today, she said. Nor tomorrow, nor next month. Take the time you need, and if in the end you decide you cannot forgive them, that is also okay. No one has the right to demand forgiveness from you after what they tried to do to you. That night, when Margaret finally left, I stayed alone in my house. I walked through every room, the living room where Olivia and Liam notified me they were going to sue me, the kitchen where I spent so many nights crying in silence, the guest room where I kept the photographs from when they were children. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. I sat at my desk, I took out paper and pen, and I started writing the letter that would accompany my will. The letter my children would read when I was no longer here. The words flowed easily, not with rage, not with resentment, only with truth. Dear Olivia and Liam, I wrote, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and it means you received the inheritance I decided to leave you. It is not everything you have, it is not even the majority, but it is what I chose to give you, and I want you to know why. I continued writing. I told them about the day they started the process, about the months of silence, about the pain of discovering they saw me as an obstacle and not as a mother, about the legal battle I had to fight to maintain my dignity, and about the decision I made afterward. I did not disinherit you completely, I wrote, because despite everything, you are my children. You grew in my womb. I fed you from my body. I loved you with every fiber of my being, and that love, although betrayed and wounded, does not disappear completely. But I did not reward you with everything either, because doing that would be teaching you that betrayal has no consequences. That abuse is forgiven without repentance, and that would be doing you more harm than good. I finished the letter. I sealed it in an envelope. I kept it with the documents Alexander had given me. Someday, when I wasn't there, my children would open that envelope. They would read those words. And maybe, just maybe, they would understand the pain they caused. Or maybe not. Maybe they would just see the money and feel cheated not to receive more. I couldn't control it. I could only tell my truth and let them do with it what they wanted. I went to bed that night exhausted but strangely at peace. I had fought. I had won. I had protected my future, and although I had lost my children in the process, or maybe I never really had them, I had won something more important, my dignity, my voice, my right to exist as a complete person until my last day. The days after the trial were strange, quiet but heavy, like when a storm passes and the air still smells of rain. I woke up that first morning without the knot in my stomach that had accompanied me for 4 months, without the anxiety of expecting a summons, without the fear of losing my freedom, but I didn't wake up happy either. I woke up empty. Margaret appeared early with fresh bread. She didn't ask if she could come in. She simply came in, made coffee, set the table, and we had breakfast together in silence. It was a comfortable silence, the silence of someone who understands that not all wounds need words to heal. After breakfast, my phone rang. A number I didn't know. I hesitated before answering. It was a journalist. She had been in the courtroom. She wanted to do an interview about my case, about older women being financially abused by their families, about how I felt after winning. I thanked her but declined the offer. I don't want to be a public case, I told her. I just want to get my life back in peace, she insisted. Said my story could help other women, that it could raise awareness. I understand, I responded. But I didn't ask to be a symbol of anything. I just asked to keep my dignity. And that is private. I hung up. Margaret was looking at me from the kitchen. You did well, she said. Your story is yours. You don't have to share it with anyone if you don't want to. I nodded gratefully. In the following days, there were more calls, more journalists. Some lawyers wanted to use my case as a reference. A seniors' rights organization wanted me to give a talk. I told everyone the same thing. No, my battle was mine. I won it, and now I want peace. Alexander called a week after the trial, just to verify how I was, and to give me news. Judge Harrington had effectively referred the case to the district attorney's office. They were investigating Olivia and Liam for attempted fraud. It wasn't certain they would press charges, but the possibility existed. How do you feel about it? Asked Alexander. I didn't know what to answer. How is a mother supposed to feel knowing her children might face criminal charges? Relieved because justice works. Devastated because they are her children. Both things at the same time, and neither completely. I am not going to press for them to file charges, I said finally. But I am not going to ask them not to either. Let justice take its course. Alexander seemed to understand. That is wise, he said, and very generous considering everything. Weeks passed. I established a new routine. Yoga in the mornings, coffee with Margaret 3 times a week, book club on Thursdays, review of my investments on Mondays. Little by little, the house stopped feeling like a battlefield and returned to feeling like a home. 1 month after the trial, I received a letter. The sender was Liam. I held it in my hands for a long time before opening it. Part of me didn't want to read it. Part of me was afraid of what it might say. Finally, I opened it. Liam's handwriting was irregular, as if he had written with a trembling hand. "Mom," it began. "I don't know if you are going to read this. I don't know if you want to hear from me after everything. But I need to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry for losing the case. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for being so blind and so greedy that I didn't see what I was really losing until it was already too late." I continued reading. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he wrote. "I don't expect us to be a family like before. But I needed you to know that I was wrong, that Olivia and I were wrong, and that I am going to have to live the rest of my life knowing I betrayed the person who loved me most in this world." The letter ended there, without asking for anything, without suggesting reconciliation. Just an apology, an admission of guilt. I left it on the table. Margaret, who had come to visit me, saw it. "Are you going to answer?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But not today." I kept the letter in a drawer, along with all the other things from this story that I needed time to process. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't answer it either. I simply kept it, as evidence that maybe, somewhere deep down, Liam did feel something akin to remorse. From Olivia I heard nothing. No letters, no calls, nothing. And it didn't surprise me. Olivia was always the proudest, the most stubborn, the one who never admitted being wrong. Maybe someday she would write too, or maybe not. It was no longer my responsibility to wait. 2 months after the trial, I received a call from the Chamber of Commerce. They wanted to know if they could use my story in their next conference on female empowerment in business. This time, after thinking about it a lot, I said yes, but with conditions. No names of my children. No overly personal details. Just the part about defending your autonomy when everyone doubts you. I gave the talk on a Tuesday afternoon. In front of 200 businesswomen. I spoke about building wealth, about protecting it, about not letting anyone, not even family, take away what you worked to create. The women listened in silence. At the end, there was long applause. Several approached afterward to share their own stories. And I realized I was not alone, that there were many of us fighting the same silent battles. That night, back home, I sat at my desk. I looked at the photographs on the wall, Olivia and Liam as children, smiling, innocent, not yet corrupted by greed. And I allowed myself to cry, not for what I lost, but for what I never really had. The family I thought I had was an illusion, but the life I had now, the freedom I had defended, that was real, and it was enough. 3 months after the trial, on a Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margaret had gone to visit her sister. My book club friends weren't coming until Thursday. I opened the door cautiously. It was Olivia. She looked different. Thinner, haggard, her hair without its usual care. She wore simple clothes, nothing of the polished style she always maintained. We looked at each other in silence for several seconds. Neither knew what to say first. "Can I come in?" she asked finally. Her voice was small, almost shy. Nothing like the confident voice she used in court. I hesitated. Every fiber of my body told me to close the door, that the protection I had built included not letting in those who hurt me. But another part, that maternal part that never dies completely, wanted to listen. 5 minutes, I said. She nodded. She entered slowly, as if afraid I would change my mind. We sat in the living room, the same place where 4 months ago she had notified me she was going to sue me. The irony was heavy. Olivia looked at her hands. She played with her fingers nervously. "Mom," she began, and her voice broke. "I have come to tell you something I should have said months ago. I'm sorry." I raised a hand. "I don't want empty apologies, Olivia. Not after everything." "They aren't empty," she interrupted me. Her eyes finally found mine. There were tears there. Tears that this time seemed real. "I have spent 3 months without sleeping, without being able to look at myself in the mirror, reliving every moment of that trial. Every lie we told, every false accusation, and the worst was not losing the case. It was realizing what I had become." She continued speaking. "Liam and I went to therapy, together first, then separate. My therapist asked me a question I couldn't answer. She asked me, 'When was the last time I called you just to know how you were, without wanting something, without needing something?' And I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember a single time in the last 5 years. The silence filled the room. I couldn't remember that call either, because it never existed." Olivia breathed deep. "Dad left us when we were kids, and you worked so hard to give us everything, so we wouldn't feel his absence, so we would have opportunities, and at some point, without realizing it, I started seeing everything you did as an obligation, as something you owed us, not as love, as debt." She paused. "When you started talking about donating money to charities, I got angry. I thought you were being irresponsible, that you were wasting our inheritance, ours, as if it were ours since forever, as if your money belonged to us by right, and I convinced Liam that we had to act, that we had to protect what was ours." I listened to her without interrupting. "But the lawyer?" I continued. "Those messages, that plan, that wasn't impulse. It was calculated." Olivia nodded. Her tears were falling freely now. "I know, and that is the part that shames me most. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a plan, thought out, executed, and justified in my mind as something reasonable, as protection, when in reality it was theft, it was abuse, it was betrayal." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "The district attorney's office cited us last week. They are going to press charges. Attempted financial fraud. My lawyer says I probably won't go to prison, but I will have a record. I will lose my professional license, my reputation, everything." She paused. "And I deserve it. I deserve it all." I said nothing. What could I say? That she didn't deserve it? It would be a lie. That I was glad for her consequences? It would be cruel. I simply stayed in silence. Olivia continued. "I didn't come to ask you to talk to the DA. I didn't come to ask you to withdraw anything. I came because I needed to look you in the eyes and tell you that I know what I did, that I know the damage I caused, and that if I could turn back time, if I could undo everything, I would. But you can't," I said finally. "You can't undo what's done. You can't erase the pain. You can't recover the trust you destroyed." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. I don't deserve to ask for it. I am just recognizing the truth and accepting the consequences." We stayed in silence, a dense and painful silence. Finally, Olivia stood up. "Thank you for listening to me," she said. "I know you didn't have to." I accompanied her to the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Mom," she said with a broken voice, "I want you to know something. I may have lost the right to be your daughter, but you are never going to lose the right to feel proud of yourself. You fought, you defended yourself, and you won. That is more than I will ever be able to say." I closed the door when she left. I stood there for a long time, processing, feeling. Olivia's visit changed nothing legally. It didn't erase the past, but it did change something inside me. It showed me that maybe, just maybe, something of the daughter I raised still existed under the layers of greed and error. That night I called Alexander. I told him about the visit, about the apologies, about the charges from the DA. He listened in silence. When I finished, he asked, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. "Nothing," I responded finally. "I am not going to ask them to drop the charges, but I am not going to press for them to be more severe either. Let justice take its course. Olivia has to face the consequences of her actions. That doesn't change because she finally realized what she did." Alexander agreed. "That is a fair position," he said. "And mature. More mature than many would be capable of." We hung up. I sat in my living room. The same room where Olivia had just cried. Where Liam had looked out the window, avoiding my gaze months ago. Where everything had started to break. And I realized something important. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be a single event. It would not be a moment where everything magically fixed itself. It would be a process. Long, painful, uncertain, and maybe it would never be completed. Maybe I would live the rest of my life with this crack in my heart, with this scar that would never heal completely. But I would be okay. Because there was something more important than forgiveness. There was dignity. There was self-respect. There was the certainty that when they attacked me, I defended myself. When they tried to erase me, I remained visible. When they wanted to silence me, I raised my voice, and that no one could take away from me, not even my own children. 6 months after the trial, I received a call from Alexander. The district attorney's office had reached a plea deal with Olivia and Liam. No prison time, but probation, community service, considerable fines, and permanent criminal records. Both lost their professional licenses temporarily. They would have to rebuild their careers from scratch. "How do you feel?" asked Alexander. "Tired," I answered honestly. Tired of all this. Of the legal battles. Of the contradictory emotions. Of being the woman who had to sue her own children to keep her freedom. I just want it all to end. "It will end soon," said Alexander. "The case is closed. The consequences are applied. Now all that is left is to live." Live. That word sounded simple, but it was complicated. What did it mean to live after all this? After discovering that the people you loved most were capable of betraying you in the cruelest way? After winning a battle but losing a family? After maintaining your dignity but at a devastating emotional cost? The following months were of silent reconstruction. Margaret remained my constant. Coffee 3 times a week. Conversations without agenda. Presence without demands. She never asked if I had forgiven Olivia and Liam. Never pressured for reconciliation. She was simply there. And that was enough. The book club became my refuge. One Thursday we read a novel about a woman who lost everything and had to reinvent herself at 70. The protagonist said something that resonated with me. Sometimes, losing the wrong people is the only way to find yourself. Susan looked at me when she read that line aloud. "I think that describes you perfectly, Eleanor," she said softly. Maybe she was right. I had lost my children. Or maybe I never really had them in the way I believed. But I had found myself. I had discovered I was stronger than I thought, more capable, more valuable than the simple role of mother who provides and forgives everything, regardless of the cost. 1 year after the trial, on an afternoon in August, similar to that one when it all began, the doorbell rang. It was Liam. He was carrying flowers, yellow roses, my favorites. We looked at each other through the partially open door. He looked different too, more mature, with new wrinkles around his eyes, the weight of guilt carved into his face. "Can I come in?" he asked with an unsure voice. This time I didn't hesitate as much. "Yes," I said. He entered, put the flowers on the table. We sat down. The silence was less hostile than before, but still heavy. "Mom," he began, "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I came to tell you I've been working at a shelter for women, victims of family abuse, as part of my community service first. But now I continue because I want to." I looked at him surprised. "You continue?" "Every woman who arrives there reminds me of what I did to you. Reminds me that abuse is not only physical, that taking someone's autonomy away is violence, that using the legal system to control is abuse. And every time I help someone escape that situation, I feel that maybe, just maybe, I can do something good with all the bad I did." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't expect this to change anything between us. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that your fight was not in vain, that it changed me, that it forced me to see who I had become, and that I am trying to be different, better, even if it is too late for us." "Liam," I said with a soft voice, "it is not too late for you. It is too late for things to go back to how they were. That died. But it is not too late for you to build something new, something better. He nodded, wiping his tears. That is all I can ask for. We talked for an hour. Not about the past, not about the trial, about his work at the shelter, about the women he helped, about what he had learned. When he left, he hugged me. It was brief, awkward, but genuine. Thank you for listening to me, he whispered. Always. I closed the door when he left. I stayed thinking. Forgiveness is strange. It doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It isn't a moment of clarity where everything is fixed. It is small, gradual, like seeds planted that maybe someday will grow, or maybe not, but at least now there was fertile soil, possibility. That was more than we had before. From Olivia I knew little. Occasionally Liam mentioned she was also in therapy, that she had lost many friendships when the case went public, that she worked a simple job while rebuilding her reputation. She didn't seek me out, and I didn't seek her out. Maybe someday she would knock on my door too, or maybe not. It no longer depended on me. 2 years after the trial, the Chamber of Commerce invited me again. This time, not as a speaker, as an honoree. They wanted to recognize my entire career. 40 years building a business, creating jobs, investing in the community. And yes, also for defending my right to autonomy when they tried to take it from me. I accepted the recognition. The night of the event, I went up on stage in front of 500 people. Business owners, officials, press. And in the third row, I saw Margaret, smiling with pride. Next to her were Susan and Patricia, my friends, my true family. When they handed me the plaque, they asked me to say a few words. I stood in front of the microphone. I looked at all those people, and I spoke from the heart. I spent 40 years building wealth, I said. But 2 years ago I learned that the most important wealth is not what you accumulate in the bank. It is what you build in your dignity, in your autonomy, in your right to exist as a complete person until your last day. I continued. Someone once tried to take that wealth from me, tried to declare me incompetent, tried to erase me, and for a moment I thought about giving up, about signing the papers, about being what they wanted me to be, a docile old woman who causes no trouble. But then I remembered something. I remembered I had survived 40 years of challenges, of crises, of impossible moments, and if I had survived all that, I could survive one more battle. I paused. So I fought. Not with rage, not with vengeance, with truth, with documents, with witnesses, with the simple insistence that I deserved to be heard. And I won. Not just the case. I won something more important. I won the certainty that I will never again allow anyone to make me feel invisible, not even my own family. The applause was long, loud. Several women in the audience stood up. I saw tears on some faces, recognition on others. After the event, dozens of women approached, each with her own story, her own battle, her own moment of having to choose between false peace and real dignity. A woman of about 70 took my hands. "Thank you," she said with a broken voice. "My son is trying to do the same thing your children did. And I was considering letting him take control just to avoid conflict. But your story reminded me that peace bought with submission is not peace. It is surrender. And I didn't survive 70 years to surrender now." That night, back home, I sat at my desk. I took out the notebook where I had documented everything. The days of silence, the pain, the loneliness, the tears, but also the victories, the call to Alexander, the testimonies, the verdict, the reconstruction. And I wrote one last entry. Today, 2 years later, I can say it was worth it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. It wasn't without pain. But it was worth it. Because today I look in the mirror and I see a complete woman. Not a victim, not a disposable old woman. A woman who fought for her dignity and won. I closed the notebook. I kept it together with all the legal documents. Together with the letter I had written for my will. Together with the dried flowers Liam brought me months ago. All part of this story. All part of my story. And then I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I allowed myself to imagine the future. Not with my children, necessarily. Maybe they would be there. Maybe not. But with Margaret, with my friends, with my work in charitable organizations, with my autonomy protected, with my voice intact. I imagined myself growing old in this house, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not for what I had. I imagined making decisions about my life until my last conscious day. I imagined dying someday, knowing I lived on my own terms. That when they tried to erase me, I refused to disappear. And I realized something fundamental. The story I had just lived wasn't just mine. It belonged to all women who were ever underestimated for their age, discarded for their gender, seen as obstacles instead of people. All the women who had to fight to keep their dignity when the world decided they no longer mattered. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 64 years old, and 2 years ago my children tried to declare me incompetent to control my wealth. They tried to erase me, turn me into a shadow, into an automatic signature on documents I wouldn't understand, into a convenient old woman who causes no trouble. But I fought, with intelligence, with proof, with the simple insistence that I deserved to be heard. And when Judge Harrington asked in that courtroom who was lying, the answer was clear. It wasn't me. It was never me. They lied, and I told the truth. And the truth, it turns out, still means something, still has power, still can win. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, if anyone ever tries to take away your voice, your autonomy, your right to exist fully, remember this: you are stronger than you think, more valuable than they tell you, and you deserve to fight for your dignity. Because in the end, the only thing we truly possess in this life is not money, it is not properties, it is our capacity to choose, to decide, to live on our own terms until the last day. And that, no one has the right to take from you. No one.